This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Winter storm warning for some. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. Yes, 6 to 12 inches of snow possible over the next 24 hours for central New York, the eastern Twin Tiers, and northeastern Pennsylvania. If you don't live there, you are in the clear. But if you do, the wet turns white this afternoon and tonight. Meteorologist Kevin Williams.
It is going to be very elevation dependent, also dependent on the development of a secondary storm near New Jersey, which will have copious moisture. Bottom line is, the nearer to the storm in New Jersey, and the higher up in elevation you are, the greatest the snowfall will be. And so if you're listening to us in Harpersville, you're listening to us in Carbondale, expect a winter wonderland tonight and tomorrow.
So when it comes to stickage, we just made up a word there, meteorological term, stickage. Are we talking here today, gone tomorrow kind of thing? Or
yeah, I mean, the ground is still warm, Bob, so melting, even if it's not that warm, because it's going to stay chilly for a while. You know, there's going to be compaction, compression, melting, yes.
Okay.
But just so you know, as we mentioned the other day, we're still intrigued about the pattern in the days immediately after Thanksgiving. Some very cold air will be nearby, and there may be a storm nearby to the south. Watch the period from Black Friday, as it were, into the first few days of December for some more meteorological mischief, maybe some festive flakes for all.
All right, something to look forward to next week. Thank you, Kevin. In the meantime, that messy mix of wintry precip could make for a slow go this afternoon and tonight along Interstates 88, 86, 81, and 80, as well as the northeast extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Another threat from Russia, Ukraine claims Moscow fired an intercontinental ballistic missile, marking the first time such weaponry has been used in the war. Reporter Keir Simmons.
It is difficult to understand why Russia would fire an ICBM capable of traveling thousands of miles, just hundreds of miles, except that that kind of missile is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. So was this another example, if it was an ICBM, of Russia rattling the nuclear saber?
Also news from overseas, the International Criminal Court today issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. The ICC charging the head of state with war crimes for the war in Gaza. Netanyahu claims that world body is anti-Semitic, and there's nothing more just than the war in Gaza. An arrest warrant also issued for a Hamas military leader. Congress has failed to reach a deal on whether to release an ethics report against former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. GOP lawmaker Anna Paulina Luna says the misconduct allegations are unfounded.
So what you're finding now is the same thing that they did to Justice Brett Kavanaugh. These conveniently timed anonymous sources that are reporting things.
Pennsylvania Democrat Susan Wild says lawmakers will revisit the Gaetz complaints next month.
There was no consensus on this issue. We did agree that we would reconvene as a committee on December 5th.
Gaetz is President-elect Trump's pick to serve as Attorney General. He faces an uncertain confirmation hearing in the U.S. Senate. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy say their new government efficiency office will pick out thousands of regulations to eliminate. Sounds good to Ned Ryan, founder of American Majority.
This is not going to happen overnight. As much as I would like to think that we'll be able to reduce federal government, I think it's going to be 18 months to 2 years to really begin cutting those regulations, making government more efficient.
Musk and Ramaswamy are both confident the deregulation will result in mass headcount reductions across all facets of government. The Justice Department says it's time to break up Google. It argues Google has an illegal monopoly in the search engine market. said.
The Justice Department has been investigating various aspects of Google for probably the better part of a decade.
Antitrust lawyer Lee Heppner.
There's this message out there that these cases are punishing success. But I think that starts to fall away when you start hearing about all of the ways that they have prevented innovation from occurring.
The Justice Department wants to force Google to sell its popular Chrome web browser. Comcast is spinning off its cable networks. The media giant expected to announce today that it's separating from CNBC, MSNBC, and other Comcast networks. That spin-off expected to take about a year to complete. Authorities in Florida have arrested a man they say was plotting to blow up the New York Stock Exchange.
The FBI says it got a tip about Haroon Abdul-Malik Yenner collecting bomb-making materials in a storage unit and found timers and other electronics. They then went undercover, posing as members of a militia Yenner had tried to join. He allegedly told them he planned to wear a disguise to enter the stock exchange and plant his explosives, then detonate them remotely, killing everyone inside and, in his words, rebooting the U.S. government.
Michael Wallace reporting life in prison with no parole. That's the sentence a judge in Georgia gave illegal immigrant Jose Ibarra yesterday for the murder of nursing student Laken Riley. Here's correspondent Jeff Manasso.
Riley's mom, Allison, in court.
This monster took away our chances to see Laken graduate from nursing school. He destroyed our chances of meeting our grandchildren, and he took my best friend.
The case thrust into the national spotlight over the ongoing border crisis. Ibarra crossed into the U.S. illegally in 2022. Last year, the federal government paid for his flight to Georgia shortly after he was arrested on 2 other crimes in New York.
The number of Americans suffering from chronic pain is on the rise. Nearly a quarter of all adults are dealing with some kind of chronic pain, according to the CDC. And that's noteworthy because chronic pain can lead to opioid abuse. Another study finds the mental health of many of us remains largely ignored.
A third of Americans say their doctor has never asked them about their mental health. A survey by Gallup and West Health found most patients would be comfortable talking about mental health issues with a doctor. The findings come at a time when more than 1 in 5 Americans is living with a mental illness.
Michael George reporting, and Connecticut women's basketball coach Gino Auriemma has now officially the most wins in college basketball history.
Victory number 1,217, and Gino Auriemma is college basketball's all-time wins leader.
The record was broken last night when number 2 UConn throttled Fairleigh Dickinson. In his 40 years at UConn, Auriemma has captured 12 national championships. Still to come on the Noon Report, a Thursday edition. The count continues. Hochul Challenger and giving back for the holidays.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, tracking some wintry weather moving into the region. Forecast details are up in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, can't wait to hear what you have to say then. But first, let's check some of the stories making news where you live. New York's latest report card on student performance contains some troubling trends. Less than half of 3rd through 8th graders are proficient in English. Just over half are proficient in math. The news gets a little better when it comes to high schoolers. Over 60% of them passed the Regents exams last year. Early returns from the recount in the Pennsylvania Senate race shows Republican Dave McCormick still in the lead. Dennis Owens with ABC 27 in Harrisburg.
A few counties are already done with their recounts, according to Team McCormick, and they released numbers and said of more than 50,000 votes cast in those 4 counties, only 6 votes ended up being changed as a result of the recount.
McCormick has about a 15,000 vote advantage over Democratic Senator Bob Casey. All Pennsylvania counties must complete their recount by next week. New York Governor Kathy Hochul could face a primary challenge when she seeks re-election in a couple years. Downstate Democrat Richie Torres may throw his hat into the proverbial ring. He tells Spectrum News,
part of the story of the election is an indictment of misgovernance in New York State and New York City. With few exceptions, nowhere was there a greater swing toward Donald Trump than in New York.
Yeah.
which was a vote of no confidence in the leadership of New York State.
A poll last month from Siena College shows more than half of New York voters have an unfavorable view of Governor Hochul. 4 University of Rochester students pled not guilty yesterday to felony charges. They're accused of plastering hundreds of anti-Semitic posters on the campus of the U of R earlier this month. Those arrests are being met with mixed reaction at the school.
Shame on the University of Rochester. We stand with the students.
Having treated this as a police matter from the start is highly concerning and chilling.
Honestly, as an Israeli and Jewish student on campus, I felt extremely concerned.
The matter's been referred to the Monroe County District Attorney's Office. The students could be expelled. It remains to be seen whether hate crime charges will ever be filed. Penn State has just won a major court case. Family Life's Sarah Harnish.
The university sued Vintage Brand in 2021, accusing the company of selling counterfeit Penn State branded clothing and merchandise without the university's permission. A federal court has agreed with the college and ordered the company to pay $28,000 in damages. The case was closely watched nationwide because a host of other universities have also filed similar lawsuits against Vintage Brand. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
Cazenovia College in central New York has been bought by a group that hopes to turn the abandoned buildings into hotels and office space. Cazenovia College closed last year due to financial problems. A Pennsylvania college is using newly acquired grant money to fight food insecurity.
York College has secured a $40,000 state grant that will be used to expand a campus food pantry for students who are going without meals. The pantry will offer healthy, fresh, local, and even organic food options for students at no cost. The pantry is located in the basement of the Student Union Building, and the college will also use the grant money to buy a refrigeration unit to store campus-grown produce and keep it fresh. York College, which has around 4,000 students, will receive the grant in January. Close to 30 colleges and universities across Pennsylvania are receiving similar grants to fight food insecurity. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thanksgiving's a week from today, and hundreds of local not-for-profits are doing what they can to help the less fortunate this holiday season.
It's always better to give than to receive, and when you help someone, it makes you feel good, and then there's a lot of people who are having some difficult times because of the inflation.
Volunteers in Monroe County, New York, donated food yesterday that they've been collecting the past month from grocery stores, police stations, and churches. Volunteers in Snyder County, Pennsylvania, also in a giving mood this holiday season. They're collecting supplies to serve Thanksgiving meals to some 500 families.
Nobody should be hungry. Nobody should be homeless. Our veterans, nobody, everybody should be taken care of in this country. I mean, we've got more than plentiful bounty people need taken care of, and we're just trying to help.
Volunteer Robert Lynch says it's a labor of love.
Just want to give back to people. I tell anybody, you're hungry, you're cold, you're in need. Don't be afraid to ask. Somebody's always willing to help. I mean, as bad as this world can be, there's decent people out there to help.
He's planning a similar outreach in Snyder County at Christmas time. Wreaths Across America is looking for volunteers to place Christmas wreaths at the grave sites in cemeteries where soldiers are buried. There's going to be a special ceremony next month at Woodlawn National Cemetery in Elmira, as well as the Bath National Cemetery in Steuben County. Vietnam War vet Larry Sherman is helping sponsor the Elmira event.
It brings a lump in your throat every time you set a wreath, render a salute, read the name, and step away. And then when it's all filled and step back and see all that red and green against those white marble stones, it's a fantastic sight. That's Christmas to me, that day.
That day is Saturday, December 14th. That is when the wreaths will be laid at the grave sites. And if you'd like to sponsor a wreath or volunteer, go to wreathsacrossamerica.org. Sports is next. We call it the 2-minute drill on Family Life.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the 1-2 punch of the New York Knicks was too much for the Suns to handle. In Phoenix, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns combined for 70 points in the Knicks' 138-122 win over the Suns. Brunson racked up 36 points and dished out 10 assists, while Cat had 34 points and grabbed 10 rebounds. For the Knicks, it's their fourth straight victory. In Memphis, Joel Embiid had a big night, scoring 35 points and hauling down 11 rebounds, but he didn't have a lot of help. The 76ers dropped their fifth straight game, this one to the Grizzlies, 117-111. Paul George left the game with a knee injury in the third quarter, and that kind of added injury to insult. Cleveland bounced back from their first loss of the season with the 128-100 thumping of the Pelicans. The Bucks, Rockets, Warriors, Thunder, and Clippers also picked up the W. On the ice, the Sabres have gotten back to 500 with a 1-0 victory in L.A. Jason Zucker scored the game's only goal on the power play right at the beginning of the third period, and Buffalo goalie Ukko Pekka stopped all 24 shots he faced. The Flyers dropped their second straight game, falling to the Hurricanes 4-1. Also skating to wins, the Leafs, Stars, and Kraken. Cy Young Awards were handed out in Major League Baseball yesterday. The Best Pitcher Award in the National League went to Chris Sale of the Atlanta Braves, and Tarek Skubal of the Tigers won it in the American League. Both pitchers achieved the Triple Crown of pitching, leading their respective leagues in wins, ERA, and strikeouts. Only the fourth time in history that has ever happened. That is a look at sports.
All right, thank you, Randy. Still to come on the Noon Report, winter storm warning. Are we close to nuclear war and pricey art sold at auction?
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. The 20th century could be called the century of utopian fantasies, whether through economics or military force or eugenics. Thinkers that abandoned the idea of sin and rejected the providence of God believed that they could really fix the world. They all failed, of course. In fact, it's more accurate to think of the 20th century as the century of failed utopian fantasies, and millions paid the price for their bad ideas. Understanding this history, including the many casualties of these false worldviews and the bad ideas that still threaten our world, is crucial, especially for Christians. After all, despite the legacy of world wars, totalitarian regimes, and technological hubris, humanity is still tempted by these visions. We're still tempted to try to fix the world without God. My friend Tim Goeglein, Vice President of Government and External Relations for Focus on the Family, has recently written what I think is a definitive treatment of the utopian myths that shaped the 20th century and still define the modern progressive movement. I asked him to describe what he has learned and is communicating about utopia in his new book. Here's Tim Goeglein.
In 1516, Sir Thomas More published his book Utopia, comparing European social and economic conditions with those of an ideal society on an imaginary island off the coast of the Americas, which he called Utopia. He sought to imply that the perfect conditions on his fictional island could never exist. For centuries since More coined the word, men have sought to create their own utopias, places that possess highly desirable or near-perfect qualities for its members, a heaven on earth where everyone would get along and there would be no poverty, no war, no conflict of any kind. Thanks to turning our schools into social experiment laboratories in the 1960s, instead of institutions of learning, our educational system is broken. Our children are used as sacrificial guinea pigs, subjected to the latest and often failed educational fads while being indoctrinated in leftist worldview. As a nation, we are adrift spiritually. The common moral values we endorsed, if not always followed, are gone. What was deemed right is now wrong, and vice versa. Without a moral foundation, we make decisions that only make bad situations worse. The result is the dispirited and divided America we find ourselves in. But America will not resolve its current crisis without a restoration of faith and the virtues that come with it. both of which were tossed aside by 1960s utopians in their quest for their idea of a perfect society.
That was Tim Goeglein, Vice President of Government and External Relations at Focus on the Family, talking about the subject of his very important and helpful new book, Stumbling Toward Utopia, how the 1960s turned into a national nightmare and how we can revive the American dream. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you very much. Outside we go next, a very busy Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast this afternoon. Rain and wet snow in central New York and eastern Pennsylvania. The snow accumulating an inch or two in some of the higher elevations there. Far to the west, a couple of rain and snow showers, western New York and western Pennsylvania. High temperatures mid-30s to mid-40s. Wet snow and rain tonight into tomorrow. Accumulations will range from basically nothing, very close to Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, to up to a foot across the highest elevations of northeastern Pennsylvania. A few leftover showers on Saturday.
All right, Kevin, thank you. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price, and here's what's going on Thursday, the 21st of November. There's no business like snow business, or so they say. The flakes are flying this afternoon and tonight in central New York, the eastern Twin Tiers, and northeastern Pennsylvania. Not everybody's getting in on the action, but those who are feeling it big time. Family Life's Mark Webster has more with AAA's Elizabeth Carey.
Here we are, we've been maybe lulled to sleep a little bit here with some pretty nice weather this fall, but you know it's coming. Winter driving, and what should people be thinking about as they get ready for that?
Yeah, they have to remember that we do get winter around here. You know, normally in October, we call that Car Care Month at AAA, where we remind people to prep for the winter season. It's been such a warm fall. We know that people have put their car maintenance on the back burner because we haven't had any significant snowfall, but it will be coming. So AAA is kind of proactively reminding everyone to be prepared for that. So we always remind everyone to have the car checked over by a certified mechanic. You definitely want to check over the tire tread. It's the only portion of the car that comes in contact with the road, and it's so important to protect you to have that good tread. And then also the cheapest thing that you can do for your car is check those winter wiper blades to make sure that they're in good working order, because you don't want to end up on one of those snowy, slushy days and the wiper blades aren't working for you. So definitely get that checked. And then another reminder to people, a battery check. Batteries can really be affected by the hot weather in the summer and then the cold weather in the winter. So if you've noticed like your car sounds a little funny when it's starting, or maybe the lights seem like they're a little dimmer than they used to be, those are signs that your battery could need to be replaced. And the battery life around here is usually about 3 to 5 years.
Anybody, especially in Western New York, who went through this November storms, but anybody throughout our area has seen heavy snow and the potential, at least, to get stuck somewhere. So that brings to mind some emergency things you might want to keep packed away in your trunk.
Yeah, now is the time to pack that emergency kit. You want to make sure that you have warm clothes, a blanket, some basic tools. You want to have a cell phone charger in your car, because so many times people will call AAA and say, my phone's about to die and I don't have a charger with me. And we also remind people to pack some snacks and some water. And a lot of people are traveling over the holidays with their pets. So we always put a few pet treats in there as well. So a flashlight, some other tools can really go a long way if you do experience a breakdown.
What does AAA do to prepare for this season? You got to, I'm assuming, get more calls this time of year than you would the rest of the time of the year.
We actually have a storm team that we put into place, and we have some storm angels that are already lined up to work overtime as needed. So we definitely prepare for the winter weather. People really go into all hands on deck at AAA because we do know that call volume does increase. So we do ask people, if they're stuck on the side of the road, we're going to prioritize that call. If you're at home and you're having a problem, we might say, please be patient and wait a little bit while we get to the people on the roads first. Those are things that usually happen when there's a heavy snowfall in the area.
All good stuff. There any other advice comes to mind here?
Just a reminder to control your speed and put the phones down. We have seen so many crashes, even on dry weather, sunny days across the region, where people are looking at their phone, they're distracted, and they smash into the vehicle in front of them. So we can't have that in the winter weather. It'll just make the situation even worse. So we want to make sure that everyone is being as safe as possible at all times, especially when winter weather arrives. So a reminder to control your speed. That's going to be able to help you control that vehicle. If you do experience, and you start to spin out, apply your brakes and steer in the direction that you want to go. That's going to help you avoid skidding. And then another thing is to keep that gas tank at least half a tank full. You don't want to be running out of gas or stuck on the side of the road road and you have no fuel, and then you can't keep warm in the car. So all things to remember as we enter that winter season.
Timely stuff there from AAA's Elizabeth Carey. And again, winter storm warning from 4 o'clock this afternoon until 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon for central New York, the eastern Twin Tiers, and northeastern Pennsylvania. You're listening to the Noon Report, a Thursday edition, and next at noon, Family Life peels back the horrifying and timely topic of nuclear war. How close are we to nuclear war? Big question mark there. Annie Jacobson is an investigative journalist who wrote a book on the topic. She spoke recently to our own Greg Gillespie.
We spent a good period of time this summer and fall hearing that the nation of Iran was within 2 weeks of activating a nuclear program. Now we have Russia opening the door to using nuclear weapons, or at least threatening to, because of the U.S. and North Korean involvement in Ukraine. Annie, to go this in-depth, you talked with 47 people and got a lot of insider information.
You know, how many octogenarians who dedicated their lives to national security, be it, as the director of science and technology at the CIA or a general at the Pentagon, have said to me, Annie, my life was about preventing World War III, and we did it. These are the Cold Warriors speaking. Deterrence holds, kind of like this, with this authoritative voice. But if it doesn't, everything unravels. And that word unravels began to haunt me. What does that unraveling look like? Just how fast it all unravels. And that's why the ticking clock is so terrifying and hopefully so effective, not to unnecessarily terrify people. It's to realistically inform people of just what a razor's edge we all stand on, because suddenly this idea of certain authoritarian leaders or dictators are talking about the possibility of nuclear use.
Annie, your book essentially explains a scenario when a nation, you use the example of North Korea, launches a missile at the U.S., and you walk us through 3 24-minute periods. That's less than 80 minutes. What lessons does your research teach you?
They shocked me when I learned them, and they continue to shock me. Russia, wanting to have everything on parity, on par with the United States, has its own set of space-based satellite systems that look at ICBM launches. But as all the experts will tell you, the Russian systems are deeply flawed. I didn't find a single person who would tell me otherwise. So let's say there was a rogue launch at the United States of one weapon, and the president decided to strike back with 80 nuclear weapons, as is suggested in that situation. Russia could mistake those missile launches for hundreds of weapons, and then it looks like they're coming at Russia, okay? Even more perilous.
This presumes the strategy of what they call MAD, mutually assured destruction. No one will start a nuclear war because the retaliation will wipe them off the map too. That's the deterrence you're talking about. Why isn't missile defense a strategy of knocking down incoming nuclear warheads?
The sword and the shield, right? The nuclear missiles are just basically a giant technological sword. And this idea of an interceptor missile, people sometimes think of Israel's Iron Dome, right? Is the giant shield. And we see that on television. The rockets coming in from Hamas, and the Iron Dome is able to, it functions like a big bubble. Well, that is just simply not the case with the interceptor missiles. There are roughly 1,700 ready for launch nuclear weapons on either side, Russia, U.S. There are a grand total of 44 interceptor missiles in the U.S. arsenal. So how's that going to work?
Annie Jacobson is an investigative journalist and a reporter on military and national security issues. What motivates you to do this kind of in-depth research about the topic of nuclear war?
I try to write for the layman. I try to write for high school students, because they are important and they matter, right? I know I'm read by the generals at the Pentagon, but I like to be read by the little old ladies in South Dakota who also write to me, because what we're taught, if you can understand the narrative, then I believe progress can be made by the people, as corny as that sounds.
Annie, this is a hard, scary topic, talking about nuclear war. Do you have a word of hope for our listeners?
For me, as an investigative reporter, as a journalist, as a storyteller, I believe in the power of narrative. Then people are comfortable having an opinion, having a voice, right? The best example that I can think of, when I was in high school in the early 80s, there was a television show called The Day After, which showed what a nuclear war would be like and the after effects. And something like 100 million Americans watched this. But more important, President Reagan watched it. And when he signed the treaty with Gorbachev and nuclear weapons numbers began to drop from these insane levels, and I find that remarkable.
Fascinating stuff there from investigative journalist Annie Jacobsen, author of the New York Times bestseller, Nuclear War. This is the Noon Report on Family Life.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. A shift in the jet stream will allow a storm system to be delivering some beneficial precipitation to the drought-stricken and dry parts of our region, but also delivering snow across higher elevations, a good deal of it at that. Let's spell it out in forecast form for this afternoon. Rain and wet snow in central New York and eastern Pennsylvania. The snow accumulating an inch or two in some of the higher elevations there. Farther west, a couple of rain and snow showers, western New York and western Pennsylvania. High temperatures, mid-30s to mid-40s. Wet snow and rain tonight into tomorrow. Accumulations will range from basically nothing, very close to Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, to up to a foot across the highest elevations of northeastern Pennsylvania. Temperatures mainly in the 30s and low 40s. Few leftover showers on Saturday.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Finally at noon, Pricey Art, an art exhibit consisting of a banana and duct tape, has sold for a price you're not going to believe.
The yellow banana with silver duct tape on top of it was expected to fetch about $1 million to $1.5 million at auction Wednesday night. Heading into it, this is how David Galprin with Sotheby's New York explained the art.
We are looking at an ordinary banana and an ordinary piece of duct tape. However, what makes the ordinary extraordinary is the intention of the artist who put this together.
But Justin Sun, a Chinese collector and founder of a cryptocurrency platform, bought it for $6.2 million. Sun says in the coming days, he'll eat the banana as part of the unique artistic experience.
Matt Piper reporting that better be the best banana that guy has ever eaten. $6.2 million for a banana and some duct tape. And that's our world, the world we live in. Thursday, November 21st. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.